Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we've got another news and rumor video here to discuss. In today's video, we're looking at some signings from our past couple of days, some injury updates, some recalls, reassignments, other pieces of news, and we've got some trade rumors involving the Canucks, Blues, and Predators. We'll touch on all these things and the trade rumors coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Now before we get started, don't forget to like this video and subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to without all of you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below, don't forget to comment on the road to 1,000 subscribers, and don't forget to stay tuned for videos coming out in the very near future. So in today's video, we've got the news and rumor video here to discuss. We're going to start off by looking at a signing from our past couple of days. We only saw one signing, but it was a very big one. So Adam Lowry, the captain of the Winnipeg Jets, who's 32 years old, he's a center, he's in the final year of a 5-year contract, AAV of $3.25 million. He has signed a new contract extension. So the Jets earlier in the year took care of Kyle Connor, and now they're taking care of Adam Lowry. Lowry gets a 5-year contract extension, AAV of $5 million. So I do think this is a little bit of overpayment, especially for someone who's going to be 37, 38 when this contract finishes. But still, it's not a bad deal. Lowry's a very fantastic third-line center, and he's their captain. So to see Lowry stay with the Winnipeg Jets is a really good move there from the Winnipeg Jets. Once again, I think year 4, year 5 of this contract, it won't look good. But for the first few years of this contract, it won't be a terrible deal for the Winnipeg Jets. $5 million for a third-line center who's really a solid third-line center and can play second-line center minutes. If need be, is not too bad. Lowry started the season injured, so he's only gone to 7 games so far at the NHL level, but does have a goal and 3 points, which is good news there for Lowry. After he had 16 goals and 34 points in 73 games last year, so if he's healthy enough, he can usually put up between like 30 and 40 points. So once again, I think it might be a little bit of an overpayment with the cap going up, and him being a guy who can also play second-line center minutes if they were into some injuries. It's not a bad deal in my opinion for the Winnipeg Jets. So very interesting note there, but Adam Lowry has signed a 5-year extension and he's going to stay with the Winnipeg Jets. So very interesting note there. And next, going over to a couple of injury updates. So we got a few injury updates here to talk about. Not too many, but a couple. So first, in Boston, Charlie McAvoy has underwent face surgery after taking a puck to the face a couple of games ago and is now out indefinitely. According to a couple of recent reports, it doesn't seem he's going to miss the Olympics, so he should be able to be back by then, but he's going to miss at least a little bit of time. So I'm guessing we probably won't see McAvoy until the new year, maybe at some point in January. So that's a big blow for the Boston Bruins to lose their best defenseman for the foreseeable future. Michael Kessler suffered an injury on Saturday and may miss a few weeks. This is a bad blow there. Kessler just a couple of weeks ago got back from a season opening injury. So to see him already be back on injured reserve is not great news there for the Sabres. That's a bad blow there for Kessler. Jalen Chatfield, who's missed the past 2 weeks with upper body injury, is needing a return and could return at some point on the Canes' current 3-game road trip. This is a really big boost there for the Carolina Hurricanes if they are able to get Jalen Chatfield back. Jimmy Benn was activated off of long-term injury reserve and made his season debut on Tuesday. He suffered a preseason injury, so really great news there. Jamie Benn, the captain of the Dallas Stars, is now back. Noah Philp, who has upper body injury, and Curtis Lazar, who has upper body injury, were both sent back from the team's current road trip and will miss at least the next week. So that's a bad blow there for the Oilers, as they're not going to be back until at the very least the Oilers return home. So not great news there for Edmonton. Cole Schwinn has had arm surgery and will be out the next 2 to 3 months. That is an awful blow for the Florida Panthers. Well, Eetu Luostarinen is out week to week after suffering a barbecue accident. I don't know what's with all these freak injuries. First, it was New Jersey center Jack Hughes getting injured at a team dinner, and now Eetu Luostarinen got injured with a barbecue accident. So not great news there, and the Panthers third-line center will be out for the foreseeable future. Drew Doughty, who was on IR with a lower body injury, will only miss about 2 to 3 weeks. That's really great news there that Doughty won't miss too much time and should be back at some point in December. Ryan Hartman is out week to week and was placed on injury reserve with a lower body injury, so it seems like Hartman will miss at least a few weeks. So that's not great news there for the Minnesota Wild. Simon Holmstrom missed Tuesday's game with the illness and is out day to day, while Alex Romanov, who was injured on Tuesday, has an upper body injury and was placed on injury reserve. So not great news there for the Islanders to lose Romanov, and hopefully Holmstrom will be back in the not too distant future. Tyler Boucher in the AHL for the Ottawa Senators is out weeks with upper body injuries. So not great news there for the Senators, one of their top prospects is out for the foreseeable future, while Lars Eller will miss Thursday's game with a undisclosed injury. Not great news there for the Senators, as Eller's a really solid fourth-line center. Koivunen was placed in injury reserve with a lower body injury. He missed that last game in the Global Series, so that's not great news there for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Joey Daccord is activated off of injury reserve and returned to game action after missing 2 weeks. So great news there that Joey Daccord was back in the game action for the Seattle Kraken. Well, Matt Murray was placed in injury reserve and will be out 4 to 6 weeks with lower body injury. So goalie comes back, goalie goes out. I think the Kraken will make that swap, but still it's bad news to see that Matt Murray is currently injured for the Seattle Kraken. Dominic James was activated off of injury reserve and returned to game action after missing a few games. So really great news there for the Bolts. Well, Maxwell Crozier was placed in injury reserve with undisclosed injury and will be out at least a week. And Eric Chernak missed Tuesday's game with undisclosed injury and is out day to day. So not great news there for Tampa Bay Lightning, as Crozier and Chernak are both injured right now. Nick Waugh will miss a few games with undisclosed injury for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and Austin Matthews didn't play on Tuesday and won't play on Thursday due to his lower body injury. So not great news there for the Leafs. Matthew Nyes also missed Tuesday's game with a lower body injury and is out day to day. So the hits just keep on coming for Toronto, as Waugh, Matthews, and Nyes are all currently injured at this point in time. Connor Garland will return to game action on Thursday after missing 1 game with undisclosed injury. So good news to the Canucks to see Garland get back into game action. Well, Teddy Blueger suffered a setback and will be out longer than expected. So not great news there for the Vancouver Canucks. Jeremy Elazon in Vegas was placed in injury reserve with undisclosed injury, and Nick Dowd missed Wednesday's game and could miss Thursday's game due to upper body injury. So not great news there for the Caps' fourth line center. So lots of very interesting injury updates from our past couple of days, but very interesting out there. Next, going over to some recalls, some reassignments, and some waiver updates. So when it comes to some recalls and reassignments, there are a few guys who were recalled, including Boston's Michael Callahan, Vladislav Kolyashnuk in Dallas, Devine in Florida, Haight in Minnesota, Warren in NYI, Halliday and Thompson in Ottawa, Poulin in Pittsburgh, Molgard in Seattle, and Carlisle and Santini in Tampa. Carlisle and Santini were recalled because of the injuries to Chernak and Crozier. Molgard was recalled to add some forward depth for the Seattle Kraken. Poulin was recalled because of the injury to Koivunen for Pittsburgh. Thompson and Halliday were recalled probably because of the injury to Lars Eller. Warren was recalled by NYI because of the injury to Romanov. Haight was recalled because of the injury to Hartman. Devine was recalled because of the injuries to Louis Turainen and Schwind. Kolyashnuk was recalled. I'm guessing the Stars have some problems on the blue line. And Callahan was recalled because of the McAvoy injury. So very interesting note there. When it comes to some reassignments, Mark Delgazio in Montreal was reassigned. Not too surprising there. Adam Schenning was sent on a conditioning loan to the Philadelphia Flyers AHL affiliates. Not too surprising given the fact Schenning has only played 1 game this year. So very interesting note there. Scott Sabner was sent down by the Bolts. They called up Carlisle and Santini. Didn't need Sabner at the NHL level anymore. And the Vegas Golden Knights sent down Ladzinski. I'm guessing they got a little bit more healthier even though they lost Lazon. So very interesting note there. But some very interesting recalls and reassignments. When it comes to some waiver updates, in our last video we talked about how John Beecher was on waivers by the Boston Bruins. And I said there was a very likely chance. I thought personally he could be claimed because he's young. He's proven at the NHL level. He's a former first-round pick. And he was claimed by the Calgary Flames. So not bad pickup here for the Flames. I think in the Flames organization, Beecher could be a solid 3rd, 4th line center. He could be a really solid young piece that the Flames could use both now and hopefully in the future. So I'm not too surprised Beecher was claimed given his draft pick status and also given the fact he started to become a really solid, hard-hitting bomb 6'4" in the Bruins organization. I'm quite surprised the Bruins even considered placing him on waivers, and not too surprised the Flames pick him up. So very interesting note there. Well, I also saw a couple of players get placed on waivers and cleared a couple of days ago. I'll touch on one in a minute, but Philip Tomasino in the Pittsburgh Penguins organization was placed on waivers, cleared, and was sent down. I thought there was a very likely chance Tomasino would get claimed because he's a really solid bomb 6 forward. He especially still that last year when the Penguins acquired him from Nashville. He had a really solid stint last year. Hasn't done the greatest this year, so he's sent down to the minors. I'm quite a little bit surprised that no one claimed him, but he's going to remain in the Penguins organization at the AHL level. So very interesting note there. One very interesting piece of news here is that the Senators and the Philadelphia Flyers hooked up on a trade. The trade was as follows. The Ottawa Senators reacquired Dennis Gilbert from the Philadelphia Flyers in exchange for Maxence Gounet. Now, Gounet was a guy who we mentioned, I think, in training camp as a potential trade target for the Ottawa Senators. He hadn't signed a new contract. He was an unsigned RFA. The Sens really wanted to just give him a fresh start because he had really fallen down the depth charts on the Sens blue line after the acquisition of Spence and with how well Kari Yakimchuk was playing. So they wanted to try and just give him a fresh start. So they deal him to Philadelphia. They get Dennis Gilbert back. Gilbert actually spent last year after the trade deadline with the Ottawa Senators after he was a part of the Dylan Cousins deal. He left his UFA in the offseason to go to Philadelphia, but now he is back in Ottawa. So Gilbert's an AHL level guy at this point in time who can be a call-up option and be a serviceable third-pair defenseman on occasions. So this isn't a bad pickup here for the Ottawa Senators, as they're able to get Dennis Gilbert and add some defensive depth back to their NHL team. While for the Flyers, they get a young prospect, Tim Gounet. I think he could challenge for a third-pair role. He signed his new contract, a one-year league minimum deal with the Philadelphia Flyers, and then after that, like we just mentioned, he was placed on waivers. Given the fact any team could have traded for him, I didn't think there was anyone who was going to claim him, and he cleared. So not too surprising there. And Gounet is now going to be with the Philadelphia Flyers. He's going to start at the AHL level, and maybe he gets a call-up option at some point. So very interesting note there. But the Senators have reacquired Dennis Gilbert from the Philadelphia Flyers, and they sent Max Gannett there, who signed his new contract, and who has been sent to the AHL off of waivers. So very interesting note there. One other quick piece of news. Zane Parekh, the young Flames defenseman, has been announced that he will be loaned to World Juniors for the World Junior Championship in December. So very interesting note there. Not too surprising. Parekh wasn't having the greatest of starts with the Flames this year. So he's going to go to the World Junior Championships in December, and we'll see how he does. So very interesting note there. But very interesting note there that Parekh is going to go to the World Juniors. And lastly, here going over to a couple of trade rumors. So got a couple of trade rumors here to talk about. First with the St. Louis Blues. Dave Pagnotta was mentioning Jordan Kyrou recently. I think it was on one of his radio hits. It might be one of his articles. And he says that Jordan Kyrou was brought up in the summer as a potential trade candidate before his no movement clause kicked in. As we think we've mentioned back in the offseason, also a couple of videos ago, we mentioned this too. According to Dave Pagnotta, those discussions haven't stopped even after his no movement clause kicked in. And that the Blues are still open to inquiries about Jordan Kyrou. So we've heard about the Blues sort of being open for business, like Armstrong really putting a whole bunch of players out in the market, seeing what he can get for them. I think Kyrou's a very interesting name. I mentioned this a couple of videos ago, so I won't linger on this too much, but I still think Kyrou is a very likely candidate to get moved. He's signed for, I think, 6 or 7 more seasons. He's got $8.125 million cap hit. With the cap going up, it's not going to look as bad of a deal. And for teams who are looking for another young superstar who have the cap space and the picks and prospects to make it work, Kyrou will make a whole bunch of sense. The Kraken come to mind, the Ducks, the Mammoth. We know that Montreal checked in the offseason. They could still be a team who could really heavily try and acquire Jordan Kyrou. They have the picks and prospects to do it. Another team that recently comes to mind, the Ottawa Senators. They make a whole bunch of sense. Imagine Kyrou in a top 6 that has guys like Stützle and Tkachuk. We know that the Senators have been sort of speculated to be big game hunting this year. So like if they could find some miracle way to pull it off cap-wise, I could definitely see him have some major interest in Jordan Kyrou. So we shall wait and see on that. No guarantees by any means that the St. Louis Blues will pull off a Jordan Kyrou deal, but apparently according to Pagnotta, they're at least open to the inquiries, and even though his no movement clause has kicked in, trade discussions haven't stopped. So we'll have to wait and see on that, but keep your eye on Jordan Kyrou, as I know it's not a likely option, and definitely not as likely as guys like Shen or Falk, but I definitely do think there is a possibility the Blues could try and deal Jordan Kyrou still, so we'll have to wait and see on that. Next, going over to the Nashville Predators, both Dave Pagnotta and Frank Seravalli were mentioning Filip Forsberg again. Now, when it comes to Dave Pagnotta, he says that according to his recent sources, Filip Forsberg's name is sort of circulating around the NHL and making its rounds. So apparently, according to some recent reports from David Pagnotta's sources, Forsberg's name is coming up. Now, according to Pagnotta, he says that he doesn't think it's the Predators shopping Forsberg. He said that it's probably just other teams inquiring about him, and he says that Forsberg really likes staying in the Nashville Predators organization. But Forsberg has 4 years left after this year, I think, or 3 years left after this year, at an $8.5 million cap hit. For what he brings and the potential of being a 40-50 goal scorer consistently, he would be a massive add for a whole bunch of teams. He's only like $500,000 more expensive than Kyrou, and he's got a whole bunch more goals on his resume. So I'm not sure if there's a guarantee by any means that Forsberg will get moved. He's a really solid piece in that Nashville Predators team, and he's been like their cornerstone piece over the past couple of years. But imagine Filip Forsberg got dealt. Like, that would be an insane trade. Like, I'm thinking the Predators could could get like 2 first-round picks, like a solid prospect, probably the top prospect in the acquiring team system. They could probably get like a solid NHL established player. Like they could get a really solid haul for Phil Forsberg. Now, like I said, because he's their cornerstone piece and still signed for a couple of years, I don't personally think he'll get moved, but it just seems like there's more and more speculation coming up that Forsberg could be on the block for the Nashville Predators. Frank Schiavelli also mentioned this. He says he does wonder about Philip Forsberg's name coming up and potentially being in the trade rumor mill. Now, he does also say that he thinks that they'd be more likely to try and explore the deals for other veterans on longer term deals first, probably specifically O'Reilly, Stamkos, and Marchessault before they explore a Philip Forsberg deal. But still, it's a very interesting concept to see if Philip Forsberg could potentially be on the trade block for the Nashville Predators. And like I said, I agree with Frank Schiavelli. They'll try and find deals for Stamkos, for Marchessault, and for O'Reilly before they try and find a deal for Philip Forsberg. But if Forsberg doesn't really want to be on a losing team again after finishing 3rd lowest last year, being a bottom 3 team again at this point in time this year, I could see Forsberg be open to the idea of being a trade target, even though he likes playing in Nashville. So we shall wait and see on that, but keep your eye on the Nashville Predators. While I don't think it's a pressing concern right now, maybe close to the deadline, we could see a Philip Forsberg trade, which would be absolute insanity. So we shall wait and see on that. And lastly, going over to probably the biggest piece of news that I've come across over the past little while. Rick Dhaliwal is mentioning that he says that he thinks the Canucks internally believe that if, and that's a big if, Quinn Hughes does not want to sign a long-term extension and stay with the Canucks long-term, this would be the trade deadline to move Quinn Hughes, not next trade deadline, because there would be a team out there who would get Quinn Hughes for 2 playoff runs. Now, this is a big thing. Now, I don't think Quinn Hughes gets moved because I think that he's a really big piece of the Canucks team, but there seems like they're going to have a discussion around the trade deadline. Does Quinn Hughes want to sign a long-term deal with the Canucks? Because if he doesn't, if they feel like they can maybe convince him over the next year that they can try and maybe convince him to sign a long-term extension because he's not eligible to sign until July 1st, 2026. So because he's not eligible to sign, he can't sign anything right now. But if they feel like he can still be signed, or if they want to try and get this next year to try and convince him to sign in Vancouver, I don't think he'll get moved. But if he's absolutely adamant that he does not want to sign a long-term extension in the Canucks organization, he could be moved at this year's trade deadline. That is a possibility. And I think teams would be lining up out the door to try and acquire Quinn Hughes, because I know that New Jersey and the connections with the Hughes brothers, and I think eventually if he doesn't sign Vancouver, he will sign there. But imagine the return the Canucks could get for trading Quinn Hughes. Like, I know they're trading a Norris caliber defenseman and one of the best defensemen in the entire NHL, but they could get like a handful of first round picks. They could get like a solid young prospect. They could get a couple of NHL level players. Like, they could put together a really strong offer. And I think the Canucks ideally would like to keep Quinn Hughes. I think ideally they would like to have some sort of discussion, and hopefully he's able to be willing to sign an extension on July 1st in 2026. But if he's not willing to sign an extension, we could hear Quinn Hughes' name around the trade deadline, and we could see him get moved. And personally, like I said, the only way he gets moved is if he flat out says he's not signing an extension. And if that is the case, I could definitely see Quinn Hughes get moved. And for any of the teams who've been linked to top 4 defensemen, Toronto, we just mentioned, Edmonton, we just mentioned, Vegas, we just mentioned, Utah, we just mentioned. Imagine any of those teams add like a Quinn Hughes to their team. Like, that would be insanity. So very interesting out there. But keep your eye on the Vancouver Canucks, as I don't think they're going to have the greatest of seasons. They're already below 500 and one of the worst teams in the entire NHL. And if this keeps on going and Quinn Hughes is adamant he does not want to sign a long-term extension in the Canucks organization, we could be looking at a Quinn Hughes trade come the trade deadline. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But that's all I'm going to talk for today. I left you guys thoughts. Do you think we'll see a Quinn Hughes trade at this year's trade deadline? Does Philip Forsberg get moved at this year's trade deadline? Does Jordan Kyrou get moved at this year's trade deadline? Different thoughts on all of that, plus all of the news, updates, and signings from our past couple of days. That's all I'm going to talk for today. Remember to like this video, and for to subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do it for all of you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to comment. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Don't forget to stay tuned for videos coming out in the very near future. Also a blog to my news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that. So check that out. I'll link to that down in the description below. Can I see you guys all for next video? See you guys soon.